All right, just want to do a quick comparison between shooting ProRes in the native camera app, which is now available through iOS 15.1 on the 13 Pro and 13 Pro Max, and in FiLMiC Pro. How do they compare? Nerd alert, nerd alert. A techie video is coming your way momentarily. I think it's important to know the pros and cons of each app. And so basically what I've done is tested and made all the mistakes so you don't have to. So to use ProRes in the native camera app, you just have to select it in the camera settings. Then you'll see the option in the actual app interface. And there you turn it on by hitting the Pro button and then simply selecting it, or by using the logo. Turn it on or off. And now you're ready to shoot ProRes. All right, so I'll shoot a test clip here. This is the native camera app. I think it's nice to have this feature in the native camera app, but you have such limited control. It's basically auto everything that for me, for what I do, it is limited. But again, nice to have this option. All right, and so there is the native camera app. I'll hop into FiLMiC Pro. And FiLMiC Pro added BT 2020, which is more or less HDR video. And that's what I just shot in the native camera app. And by the way, I used auto settings, of course, the native camera app. So let's see what the settings are here in FiLMiC Pro. It's ISO 40 and the shutter is 148. And so that's pretty good. It's actually really good. And now I'll roll on a clip. And so now I'm rolling in BT 2020, ProRes HQ, and FiLMiC Pro. And of course, in FiLMiC Pro, you have manual control. Now the screen looks different. It currently doesn't see it as HDR, the phone. You know how when you're looking at a clip on the phone brightens it, does the HDR display. It did that while I was shooting in the native app. FiLMiC Pro does not do that. So that's one difference while you're recording. So I'll cut. Now I'll go into the player, and in the player, you see the screen getting brighter. This is in FiLMiC Pro. Now the player is displaying this as HDR on the phone, just like the native camera app did. All right, now I'm going to test dynamic tone mapping and see if it's any different between FiLMiC Pro, which is a third-party app, of course, and the native app. First up, FiLMiC Pro. All settings are locked. I'm going to record a clip. So shooting on the wide lens. You can see a little subtle exposure shift. My hand's in front of it. It opens up a little bit, and then it goes down. And so that's still being affected in the wide camera. Now the ultra wide, let me check that real quick. The ultra wide is the worst. I've noticed too that the white balance shifts as well. So I'm rolling on a clip here. Everything is locked. And yeah, I'm seeing the tone mapping. The white balance doesn't appear to be shifting as bad. Maybe they fixed that. I just updated to 15.1. And so perhaps that was a fix in 15.1. I hope so. So that's FiLMiC Pro. Now let's check the native app. I'm gonna lock the settings. So now we're on the wide lens. We're checking dynamic tone mapping. So now I'm rolling. Wide camera. To my eye, it looks the same as FiLMiC Pro. There is a subtle shift. Not horrible, but when you lock the settings, you don't want to have any shifts. The white balance appears to be solid though, for sure, which is good. Now we'll check the ultra wide. Now I'm rolling the ultra wide. Settings are locked. It might actually be better. I just did a video where I shot some client work using the ultra wide lens, and unfortunately the white balance was shifting a lot. And I reported it to Apple and FiLMiC Pro, and they looked into it. And so maybe it's been resolved in this latest iOS update. It does look better, and so that's promising. Now go ahead and look at the telephoto while I'm here. I didn't test that one in FiLMiC Pro. That looks pretty good. Looks like there may be some subtle shifts. It's a little bit hard to tell because of the framing. But I would say the telephoto is looking pretty good. Since I did that, I'm going to hop back over into FiLMiC Pro. I'll do the tele on this one now too. Lock that. I want to check where I am exposure-wise. ISO went up considerably. The tele is an f2.8, so we're at 244, 148 shutter. Okay, rolling on the tele. It looks like it's actually moving subtly a little bit more than the native app. I haven't updated FiLMiC Pro since I updated to iOS 15.1, so maybe there's an update for FiLMiC Pro, but just to my eye here on location shooting, it's subtle, but I still see it. I didn't really see it in the native camera app as much. I saw it a little bit, but not as much. But overall, that looks much better than it has in the past. The main difference between the footage in each app is minimal, which I expected. The biggest thing really is you have no manual control in the native camera app. The other thing is that the native camera app only shoots ProRes HQ. FiLMiC Pro shoots HQ, 422, LT, and proxy, so you have a lot more choice. Now the native app does have better stabilization, especially on teleshots I found. And the dynamic tone mapping seems to be slightly better with it too. But I do think FiLMiC Pro will be the same with a future update. One big thing I did discover is the ultra-wide camera has some additional dynamic tone mapping issues around digital gain, especially when shooting in high contrast scenarios. That's both in the native camera app and FiLMiC Pro. I'm actually going to dedicate a full video to talk about this. More on that coming soon. All right, so just a quick test comparing the native app and FiLMiC Pro. I think it's great that you can shoot in both. I will choose FiLMiC Pro because of the manual control. That's why I choose FiLMiC Pro regardless. However, it is cool to have that option in the native camera app. The negative is, at this point, it's only ProRes HQ, which those files are huge, and I don't like to shoot those very often. I'm finding ProRes 422 more than adequate. Often I'll shoot ProRes LT or even ProRes proxy if it's just everyday kind of stuff. When I say everyday, I mean for YouTube or more on the professional video side. But if you're doing anything with heavy color grading or visual effects or for a client, you want to shoot ProRes 422 or HQ, and now you can use either app.